Hi, friends. We are in the virtual room. This is Heidi M, and I'm sitting with, I'm going to call you a multi-talented artist, filmmaker, musician, Sook-Yin Lee. You're an icon for those of us in Toronto. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me today, Heidi.
So we're here to talk about a very exciting project that's coming to the Toronto International Film Festival. It's your feature film, Paying for It, that it's an adaptation of Chester Brown's graphic novel. So we'll get into that very, very soon. But for anybody who might listen to this and is not familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You wear various hats in the artist.
Yeah. I am from Vancouver and I ran away from home when I was 15 and art saved my life. It's really been such a guiding activity for me, and it's helped me really wade through a lot of difficult life passages and questions. And so as a young person, I really I was quite shy, so I really delved into visual art. I entered a lot of contests, writing plays. I actually made my very first film, Escapades of the One Particular Mr. Noodle. It was a contest that I found out about. And, I found out about it because somebody said, hey, there's a contest NFB is putting out. They're accepting scripts for a short film. Would you do the score if mine is chosen? And I thought, oh, what is this for? And she described it to me, and so I always did really weird little experiments as a kid growing up, and one of them was I walked the streets of Vancouver dressed as a 10-foot egg noodle to advertise an unpopular pasta bar. And when I became aware of that contest, I decided to take all those musings and writings and turn it into a film script. And then I was shocked when it was one of 10 that were chosen from thousands of pitches. And that was my trial by fire exercise in making a movie so many years ago.
Right.
And I realized that, there I had written a script with 50 character roles, and I'd never made a movie before. So I pretty much mobilized my neighborhood and got all my neighbors to act in it and my neighbor to help me make costumes and stuff. And in a strange way, I feel myself so many years later coming full circle to that sort of initial DIY methodology of like kind of hand making very personal movies. And so with Paying for It, I really mobilized people from that I've known and had developed relationships with over many years, and then also newcomers that I met and worked with that captured my imagination, and then also just reached out to so many people from my life, and then also had those contributors reach out to their allies. And so really it was a village that made this movie. And so yeah, I went on to my primary discipline is that of a musician,
Right.
and that's sort of my very core expression, especially as a vocalist. And I create and make my own music and produce my own records, and oftentimes score my own movies.
Right.
But that experience as a musician has enabled me to have inside of my body a kind of pitch, a frequency of when I know it hits my heart and my soul, and it's an expression from my soul. There's a feeling that I have when I sing. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes I sing and I'm distracted, I'm not present. But when it feels right and it hits that frequency, it rings for me inside. And I'm able to apply that to all of my other disciplines, whether I'm acting and I'll do multiple takes of a scene and I'll know which one is great.
Right.
Because of that resonant frequency. Or when, as a broadcaster, because I'm also a journalist and a broadcaster, when my aim is to always uncover or tap into the essence of what my subject matter wishes to convey and the essence of their story truthfully. And so that has always been my aim in the work that I do as a broadcaster. And that, again, if I feel that feeling, then it's right. If I don't, I have to fix it.
Right.
And same with filmmaking. So all of these different disciplines inform one another. They're all kind of in service of an expression. So that's where I come from.
That is excellent. And I love how you weave everything into like a whole, like you mentioned, because I think that is also the idea behind filmmaking in that everybody brings their discipline to make us sort of as audiences feel, experience, go through a journey with you along the way. And I also like how you described your inside ringing with the music aspect of things because I think that's not only is it visceral, but it's also visual, and I can relate to that in terms of how music hits us in a particular way when we're taking it in, or I'm sure as musicians do as well.
Yeah, it's a very innate feeling, and it's so fun that I can apply this. And having worked in so many various fields, I see how even the construction of a set list when you go out and play a concert is the
Hmm.
same mind that it requires is required for editing a film. For me, editing has everything to do with music and the sequence of how you create an arc of a feeling over a course of performing for people for 45 minutes is
Right.
the same kind of story arc that
Mhm.
you feel. So I'm very fortunate to have all those media to draw upon, and then also as an actor, I know what it is to be on the other side of a camera, and
Mhm.
I know how vulnerable that is for an actor. And each actor kind of requires a different feeling, and so part of directing is really being able to bring together all of your collaborators who are on the same page, who are we're going to have great teamwork, but also knowing how to deal with each person.
Yes, for sure. And I think that is so interesting because that's what a multifaceted artist can bring to filmmaking. You're able to kind of almost be in the shoes of your actors and colleagues that are doing serving different functions
Yeah.
in filmmaking. So I know that I want to get into the film a little bit, but I also wanted to lead up into what I've been reading of the film. I just want to make sure people understand there's a lot of enthusiasm about this film here in Toronto because it's not only because you're local, but because you're also kind of part of this really big program at TIFF, which is the platform program. And I kind of wanted to ask you first about what it means as a filmmaker and artist to be selected in a festival as large as TIFF, but also these sort of programs that are, with other international films, and it's sort of a competition in terms of.
Yeah, so for me, I knew with it's very difficult and competitive to get into a festival. And in the past, I've had huge hopes and dreams and been disappointed. And I know that hope doesn't play a great utility in my life.
Mhm,
It's a hope for a nebulous and unknown future. It's a wish instead of being present. And
mhm.
so for this movie, I specifically set to the task, my task and my aim was to serve the story. And
Yes.
my job was to deliver the best movie that I could. And I said to myself, do not fret about where it goes. Leave it up to your producers and they will find where it lands and just know that you gave it your best. And
Mhm.
so I did that. And then I was very happy to hear from the producers when they said it was in TIFF. I was like, oh, well, I didn't want to hope for TIFF, but I'm really, really happy that it's in TIFF. And I did not realize the prestigious nature of the platform program,
Mhm.
that it is specifically to champion bold directorial visions, and that we're the only Canadian film to be chosen this year in that category. To me, I feel very happy. Mostly I'm very happy because I know the good work that everybody has put into it. Everyone brought their everything they had into this. It was a small budget film, and I cast many non-actors who were peers of mine who are musicians and political activists and visual artists and comedians,
Yes.
with a knowledge of the subject matter, the tender subject matter,
Yes.
and made sure that just basically corralled a village, literally my neighborhood in Kensington Market, where I shot. The movie is unfolded the real life events in this house, and
Yes.
that I'm talking to you from. And I also shot all throughout my neighborhood in existing treasure corners of the
Mhm.
city that are still existing, that have not been gentrified, that
Mhm.
represented to me the essence of the late 90s that I was trying to portray. So really, I'm so happy for people to see our good work, because we're kind of like the Bad News Bears. I'm just so pleased with the result and the effort that went into making the movie, and I'm very pleased that Chester loves the film,
Good.
because that was he's really such an inspiration, and he's my family,
Yes, absolutely.
and I love the source material. The graphic novel to me was very important, because not only was it raising it was just a brilliant perspective as a John. It was very open and truthful and vulnerable. And he brought about a lot of important conversations around the aim to decriminalize consensual sex work. And to me, that had everything to do with labor rights,
Hmm.
women's rights, human rights, POC rights. And there's an exact parallel to the quest and struggle for LGBTQ two-spirited rights that follow
Exactly.
the exact trajectory of sex worker rights that are still not available for sex workers in Canada, and put sex workers in harm's way. So again, there were political aspects of the work
Mhm.
that were very important, but then I also wanted to make a simple and honest and heartfelt movie. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm so proud on many levels, and proud of the teamwork involved.
Yeah, no, and I think you should be. And fun fact here, I am familiar with the graphic novel, and I was just talking to my bestie. We went to one of his talks like 2016 or thereabouts, and he talked about, paying for it. And so we kind of like I already told him about the movie. So we're very much looking forward to revisiting not only like what we learned from him, from Chester Brown at the time, but also seeing this new version, because I know that I've been privy to seeing a sneak peek. So, I know that is not exactly like the graphic novel, but I do appreciate that point of view, the different points of view you're bringing into the story now.
Yes. Yes, it's a radical adaptation. I serve what I feel is the truth of Chester's memoir, his essence, but it was very hard to adapt when he granted me the ability to turn it into a movie. I quickly discovered that it was very episodic. It was great as a political treatise and a graphic novel, but novelists are able to go down little tunnels and not necessarily wrap things up. They can go here and there, and the back fifth of the book was an index chock-a-block full of intellectual, academic, and historic notes
Yes.
that launched his argument, all of which were very important. But I wanted to make a movie, so I had to figure out what were the most important parts of that index and figure out a way to tell a compelling story. And it took a long time. It was very difficult. And Chester, in the graphic novel, he did not reveal the details of the sex workers' lives. He
Right.
didn't reveal very many details of our life together, though I am a character in the book, and he
Mhm.
didn't reveal a whole lot of his friends. It was really myopically from his own perspective. But I knew from that I wanted to humanize the sex workers, and he
Yes.
wouldn't give me any details because he was very,
Protected
protective
in a way.
of their privacy.
Mhm.
So it was through research and imagination, reading clues left in the source material, and
Mhm.
also when it came the decision to expand the canvas, and all of the events that were occurring to Chester in the book happened when we were living together,
Right.
happened in the aftermath of our relationship. So, and we continued to live together for years after that as well. And
Mhm.
he's still my best friend.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to refocus this and to include what was happening to me at this time. While he
Mhm.
was on his search for sex and connection through paying for sex, I was going the culturally sanctioned route of dating and developing crushes.
Yeah.
And the two of us together in a kind of, in this 11-foot wide row house, trying to,
Navigate. Mhm.
explore our separate paths and be together and work together to try to understand one another. It was challenging and difficult. and also really beautiful.
Right.
It was never a possibility in our lives that we would break up in a traditional sense. It
Mhm.
was just that our relationship, our romantic relationship, after a period of time began to kind of the romantic and sexual side of our relationship began to fade away.
Mhm.
And it was coincided when I got the job at Much Music. I moved
Yes.
from Vancouver and was propelled in a very different, much more extroverted sphere of going to see
Mhm.
bands and talking on TV. And he was very shy and introverted. I would drag him out to clubs and he would be there in the corner reading a book. So,
Right.
I mean, and so it begins with a fictionalized or my alter ego. Her name is
Yeah.
Sunny.
Sunny.
I
Mhm.
don't call her Sook-Yin because I take artistic liberties with her.
Yes.
She's a work of autofiction. So I take the elements from my life and kind of fictionalize them and kind of make them help them serve this story of paying for
Mhm.
it. So yeah, I basically it wasn't it does incorporate those elements of us together and my journey as well in parallel to his journey. And
Yes,
um,
indeed.
yeah, so it is quite different from the graphic novel.
But you know what? I will say that because I'm familiar with both, I would say the film is a standalone art form. So I think whether or not people listening to this know of the graphic novel or not, I think it doesn't matter. I think you still get so much out of the film just based on what you're telling us now. And I also like how it's a snippet of life that we don't get to see often because we know that non-normative, non-heteronormative lifestyles are around. They've been around for a while, and a lot of us are navigating that and talking
Yes.
about that more openly now
Yes.
because of the way that things have been shifting, you know?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's still such a an area of personal. I mean, it also when I think about it, like how shy Chester was back in the day and how completely socially inept he was, it's a pretty bold move step to take,
Sure.
to go and explore the world of paying for sex as a John, and then to reveal that. But as you know, you have fun fact over your left shoulder is the diary, the
I-
comic book biography of Louis Riel by Chester Brown. He's really a person of ideas, and he really obsesses over specific notions, whether it's the Bible or
Yeah.
whether it's the story of Louis Riel, whether it's questioning the psychiatric institution, whether it is the search for the true identity of William Shakespeare or the person we know as William Shakespeare,
Yeah.
whether it is what, as he discovered, the inequities involved in lack of rights for sex workers when
For
he
sure.
began to pay for sex. I mean, that has been a huge uh, intellectual pursuit and passionate pursuit for him.
Mhm.
Mary Wept is a follow-up book that also deals with
Yes.
sex work and the Bible
I've
and
read
lots
that
of
one too.
tales.
Yes. Mhm.
Again, just a mightily cerebral, thoughtful, judicious, open, generous, respectful, intelligent person. And I
Mhm.
think the graphic novel is brilliant in its own right. And I'm so happy to hear you say that the movie is a standalone in its own right. The movie really is an amalgam of Chester's mind and my mind together. And
Mhm.
I happen to be a person that's guided by emotionality. I'm much more emotional, also emotionally reactive than Chester. And
Sure.
I really lead from the heart. I try to hit the
Yeah.
heart, hit the funny bone. And I find Chester's work very deeply moving as well.
I think so.
So
And I
yeah,
think there's room for both to navigate because that's also how we are as people and how we interact with each other in so many different, and who we were 5 years ago, not the same as today. So I feel like it's a film and it's a story of today, which I, even though it's set in the 90s, I was still sort of a teenager or tween. I can't, through those times, I can remember how the 90s were a little bit all over the place. But I think a lot of us are still all over the place as we get older. We're navigating
absolutely. It's a
all
very
different needs.
it's confusing, this mysterious life, and we're all kind of writhing in the dirt trying to figure it out. But as you say, the things that were taboo in the past are now we are starting to approach the
Mhm.
ability to ask ourselves difficult questions around intimacy
Yes.
and vulnerability and desire.
Mhm.
And things that would have been taboo for our parents to even bring up, that today's, you know, today's people are there's space. And I like what you say about even if you have polar ideas. I mean, I feel that it's a vital story from the past and it connects to today, and specifically this point in time. But what we have in this point in time is also an overwhelming technology and social media that encourages sort of polarization, encourages like call out, I'm right, you're wrong, we're
Yes.
going to battle. But what you're saying is sort of more nuance, being able to hold two ideas and maybe they're in friction with each other, but how about facilitating a conversation where we don't get our back up and we can actually hear and identify or relate to what's being wrestled with?
Yeah, no, thank you for being so attentive to that, because I think that's where, on some days we're better at it than other days, right? Like
Absolutely.
you said, we're reactive in different ways depending on even the hour.
Yeah.
At least for myself.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about your casting, because you have really great actors playing your alter egos, and you included as well someone whose work I've admired too is Andrea Warren, and familiar with her work as well. So let's talk about your casting and how soon you knew
Yeah.
who they were
Okay.
and all that.
Yeah. So again, casting super crucial. I handpicked many of the actors, and then I went through a larger, more traditional audition process to find the actors that I didn't know
Mhm.
for the roles.
Right.
Um, and so Emily Lay, who plays Sunny, was one of hundreds of actors. And there was a quality in just three of the actors that I auditioned that I could feel was a shared feeling, a resonance of Sunny. And
Mhm.
all of the actors came from a kind of alternative, world or interest.
Mhm.
Um, and so Emily had that quality, and also just a very tender emotional quality and a kind of groundedness that I really appreciated. And when I brought her together with Dan Byrne, who I also found in a more conventional audition route, Dan was, I saw hundreds of people for Chester, and
Mhm.
only two imbibed him with the qualities that I could recognize in the stellar person that I know in Chester.
Right.
And when I saw that he was making a compelling argument and I cared about him, like some actors with the same lines made him seem like a dick, and that's not interesting. You want
Right.
to care about your characters. And then when I brought the two of them together and they were in separate places, brought
Right.
together on a Zoom call, their chemistry was outstanding. There was a
Yes.
point where Emily passes um, Dan or Chester a book, and they seamlessly pass it from one
Mhm.
monitor to the other without even seeing each other. And at that point, I was just so full of gratitude and thanked them for bringing themselves forward for this project, because I was like, "Do you want to work with me?" And they were very thrilled. And Dan is a fierce artist. He
Mhm.
gets a lot of work in Canadian television, but he really lives for the art. And so for this one, he took a hit in terms of the money that we could pay him.
Sure.
And also, but he was like, I live for this. And he was like, I'll do anything. I'm fine with the full frontal nudity, and which is very taboo for most actors.
For
And
sure.
he was even offering to shave his head. And I was like, Dan, that's okay. You don't
No
have to shave.
need.
Andrea Warehun is a wonderful, wonderful person and brilliant mind, and a sex work activist. She's a filmmaker, and she's a longtime peer and friend of Chester's. I met her
Mhm.
through Chester.
Yeah.
Chester collaborated with Andrea on her first short film, Modern Horror. He
Yes.
acted as a John in that movie and also designed the poster. So, what better person to, lean on as a story consultant to ensure the veracity of the world of which I was creating, and also such a fine and warm human being.
Yes.
Um, she is a non-actor. She hasn't studied. She's done her own acting in her own films, and it's very idiosyncratic,
Mhm.
and very different kind of acting style that I wanted a much more naturalistic quality from Andrea.
Right.
She came in, she was very big, and I said, okay, you have to dial that down and really for reals here.
Mm.
And she was brilliant.
Yeah.
Then she took that direction and she blew my mind,
Mhm.
so warm and natural and present and listening. And
Mhm.
the two of them together create such incredible chemistry. There's one particular scene that was astonishing to me. We were shooting in a basement where you can't even stand up
Yes.
in a tight corner. I had designed the movie so that I didn't need a lot of angles and I could reduce the number of takes.
Right.
This was a very long scene. It's a post-coital scene where they're opening up to one another. And it's a tight two shot and a long scene, and it's a tough scene. And they both excelled beyond my wildest dreams.
It's my favorite one, actually. One of my favorite ones.
Me too. There's something about it, when you cut in a movie and you cut to a new angle, there's a perceptible energetic deflation.
Mm-hmm.
Lose energy. But if the script and the actors are compelling enough to stay and you're riveted, there's nothing else like it. And
Right.
those two really, Hania Cheng as well. She's a political activist
Mm-hmm.
and also a musician. I have a long time relationship with her as well, with them as well. And Hania plays the role of Anne, another key escort that Chester sees. And Hania is big. She's like, she comes in and she owns a room. I met her when she busted into a queer black DJ night and cut the rug. And I was like, who is she? Who is that person? And yeah, Hania, I reached out to.
Mhm.
And Chester and I worked with all of the non-actors who were actors as a in the sex worker roles. We worked with them, workshopped with them, and in my house. And Chester read his lines across from them, and so forth.
Right.
So Hania, again, I just said, because she's a musician, I said, Hania, you know it, you're smart. You dial it down from 10 to 1.
Yes.
Boom. Again, one of my favorite scenes. Again, post-coital, just two people talking on a bed, and stunning. They're
Yes.
they're both stunning together. And so it's something about, bringing together smart people with a touch for the
I think
material.
so. But I also love those scenes because of the vulnerability in the scenes, right? And again, it's this sort of story that many people might think is taboo or risque, but it's still the vulnerability in people, regardless of our roles in society,
Yeah, I'm trying to humanize everyone.
Hmm.
Well, it's all relatable. The experience is human, and I hope
For
that
sure.
even if you haven't been a sex worker, you will relate to the situations involved and the challenges inherent to the work. I watched a movie with Dylan Gamble, who is my co-composer.
Hmm.
Dylan and I created the score for Paying for It.
Hmm.
And we've made a number of DIY movies together. And we were watching a movie called A Woman Ascends. It's from the 60s. It's a Japanese movie, and it's simply
Yes.
about a
Yes.
woman who runs a brothel. And
Hmm.
it's a portrait of how difficult the work is and how difficult it is to maintain clients, maintain the workers at her brothel. It's very hard stuff. And he was like, "Oh my God, that's like working as a bar back in a bar. That's a very, very tough job. It's cleaning up after everyone and
Everybody's
cleaning the
not.
toilets and barf and like very, very hard labor." And then I was like, "Oh yeah, it's very
Mhm.
true. There's a labor involved here,
For sure.
and the rights afforded to a bar backer far exceed that of a sex worker. The lack of rights that puts them in harm's way." So, you know, I mean, in terms of cast, I also Dylan introduced me to Chris Sandiford one night at karaoke. This was hilarious, and he was an actor comedian, and I
Yes.
loved him immediately. Becky Johnson, again, an actor, comic actor who's a
Mhm.
longtime friend who has helped me through many difficult life passages. Rebecca Applebaum, who plays Laura, one of the cartoonists. I've known Rebecca since she was a few years out of high school
Oh,
and
wow.
directed her in a play. So we're talking about deep kind of
Yeah.
community relations.
Absolutely. And I think that's for those of us who are Toronto, centric, or we live in the city, we are familiar with some faces. And I think that's part of the treat of watching the film for me. Also because Kensington was a place I always frequented when I used to work nearby. So I want to leave people with that feeling of like there's a lot to appreciate, whether you're from the city or not from the city. There's so much richness in that
Well, I think also like
story.
I wanted to cast locations like character like actors. And
Right.
so in that kind of extraordinary quality of a documentary film, when you see a documentary take place in a specific place
Mhm,
where the events unfold, you can't help but there's a vibe that you
mhm,
get from that space.
for
So
sure.
I pretty much cast spaces as I imagine them, including my home. And they're places that to me embody not only the space of that, Chester is depicting in his graphic novel, but also to me are the essence of a 90s era Toronto that
Mhm.
is precious, that is
Yeah.
disappearing to gentrification and, poorly built condos. And this is a universal phenomenon. What is
Mhm.
happening in Toronto and our disappearing city has happened in Vancouver,
Yeah.
happens all across North America and even in Europe, throughout the world, the sort of decimation of cities. But luckily we still have these little pockets, and I wasn't interested in like the tourist Toronto. I wanted to see a scrappy somewhat kind of dive bar bedraggled Toronto full of extraordinary humans that I
Yeah.
love,
For sure. And it comes through. And I think that again, like I said, those are the treats for us in the film who have lived here for many years. I'm mindful of time, so I could speak for you to for another hour, but I want to remind people that maybe the public screenings look sold out for TIFF, but line up for Rush tickets. I always
Yeah.
recommend Rush line based on the theater. I just want to have a quick question. Is the soundtrack going to be available at some point as well?
Oh, bless you. Bless you so much. Yeah, I mean, so the soundtrack's really something. It's mighty. And we're in talks with a label who may put it out, or we might put it out ourselves. But
Nice.
that'll be an item. These screenings sold out in 10 seconds. I don't know if either the TIFF website is broken or if people really want to see movies right now.
But want to
And
see
there's a
movies.
lot of excitement. But those two will be over lickety split, and then I'm going to go. It's hitting a number of festivals across Canada, and then we're going to look for a launch. And for me, the cast is so extraordinary, comprised of so many talented people. I really want to make a multimedia kickoff for it and have like a fabulous show that involves music and
Yes.
performance and all sorts of stuff and Q&A, and like kind of go a fabulous route to kick off the theatrical release. And more things like that. Chester's, he's got a reissue of the graphic novel
Right. Thank you for saying that.
that is the film edition that he has photos and new notes, behind the scenes extras. That's out on Drawn and Quarterly now. And then we will also be putting out the score.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for that. I'm gonna also mention that there is a paying for it social media accounts for anybody who's again following on socials, because a lot of people seem to be informed this way. So I'll
Yeah.
tag them so that they know how to keep up with news about the film.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
paying for it film on Instagram and Twitter, and you can also follow me on Instagram, Sook-Yin Lee, Sookynlee. I added 30 because Sook-Yin Lee is a very common name in Asia. And also I'm on Twitter and Facebook public. So you all many ways
I'll
to
tag
find
you.
out about this extraordinary team behind the movie.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks for your interest and care.
Thanks.
Bye, Heidi.
Bye.